Mikkel Holm Jensen is the Concept Design Manager at LEGO Future Lab. His job with the Future Lab team is to use his design and engineering background to invent the future of play. That doesn't sound like very much pressure at all. The team is currently developing and launching radically new digital and physical LEGO play experiences. Today he will be sharing with us some of his hard-learned lessons on entrepreneurship inside a big business like LEGO. Welcome to the stage, please.
I'm a toy designer. I design play experiences that are obviously LEGO, but something the world has never ever seen before. At LEGO, I'm part of a group called Future Lab, and as the name indicates, we look a little bit further ahead, like 3, 5, or sometimes even 8 years into the future, to identify the next big disruption in the toy industry. And we're working from the mission of inventing the future of play. And that's obviously a grand statement, but basically it just means we experiment a lot. We do the weird, the challenging, the sometimes crazy projects that don't fit in anywhere else in the organization. And we kind of pride ourselves to be these rebels, the ones that are challenging how the company is run. But I'd say being a rebel inside a company is easy. It's easy to challenge status quo, it's easy to point out the mistakes and kick things over. But really, being a rebel inside a big company without losing the respect, the trust and support from your colleagues and your leadership, now that's the real challenge. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. And specifically, I'd like to share 3 challenges that we're always facing when we're starting a new project. And you'll probably recognize these as being fairly generic, no matter what kind of organization, company, student group you're part of. But also, I'd like to share 7 solutions or ways of working around these challenges. So if you look at it, it's actually a pretty good deal. You're getting like more than double the amount of solutions to challenges. So really quickly into these challenges, the first one is around change. And we all know this, change is hard, it's annoying, it's frustrating, and especially if someone else is putting it on you. And remember, LEGO is a company founded in 1932. So as you can imagine, there are tons of traditions and unwritten rules that are simply impossible for us to follow when we're creating something radically new. So managing this change is really a good challenge for us. The second one is around process. For the past decade, LEGO has been extremely successful. We've actually, in less than 10 years, managed to quadruple our revenue. And I'm super proud to play just a small part in this success. And this has only been possible because we're running a very structured process and a well-oiled machine that are delivering fantastic play experiences year after year after year. And this process I have the utmost respect for, and I do realize this is probably the main reason I have a job. But still, this is what we do in Future Lab. We try to squeeze weird projects into the middle of this process. And you hear us say things like, yeah, we know it typically takes 18 months to launch this product. Could we do it in 6 because we see this opportunity in the market and we'd really like to send out a little pilot project and explore it a little bit further. And obviously, this is not really always going to be popular. So the third challenge we see is around the philosophy and the values of the company. And LEGO is a company that's very driven by values and very mission driven. I'm proud of be working there. But it's also can be a challenge for us, especially when we're creating something new. And we typically get into these discussions when we see something of a new idea we think is going to be fantastic, and then we present it and someone says, yeah, it's a good idea, I think kids will like it, and there's probably a good business there as well. But is it LEGO? And this is like a super weird question for us, but also super relevant, right, to ask, is it LEGO? And how do we define that? And we're constantly working with that definition of what makes something LEGO. But as you can imagine, this always stirs up a lot of discussions. And unfortunately, most of the time we have all 3 of these working against us at the same time. We're changing something that no one really wants to change. We're messing up the process, and we're challenging some of the core values of the company. But fear not, as promised, there is ways around this. And what I wanted to share with you is kind of 7 solutions of 7 kind of methods that we identify working really well for us. We're by no means perfect at it, but the funny thing is that we've seen when you start focusing on, our projects move forward a lot faster. So I'll go by them one at a time. The first one is around when you just start the project. And I'm not even joking, like, you know, when you're starting the project, everyone's going to hate you. Or maybe not everyone, but at least if you're really doing something new, you will upset a few people. I say that, in fact, if you do not upset a few people with what you're doing, you may not really pushing your idea far enough. And typically you would say, just ignore the haters, we need them, we'll do our own thing. And that's great if you're running like an independent startup, but when you're part of a big organization, we really need to listen to the haters, we need to get their feedback and their input and kind of understand why are they hating us, and see if we in some way can turn this into an advantage. So we accept the haters, but trust me, we're never going to let them stop us. But if you really do, for some weird reason, if you do like people hating you, I'll give you a shortcut. Start spending tons of cash on some weird undefined project. And we've done this before, this mistake of being really excited about a new project and immediately start asking for budget, asking for a team, asking for extra resources around the organization, when really we should be focusing on developing this new play experience, making it super irresistible to kids, so everyone would want it. And in this process, when you're just starting up, it can really help to think a little bit like a startup. And not think of what is the budget we need, but think more like saying, what if we had no money at all? What would we do if we had no budget at all? How would we get this started? How can we build that easy start or that first minimum viable product that could prove the potential of our idea? So finding that easy start can really be helpful. So the point though is you can't do this alone. You need at least maybe one friend. But you need really to build a tribe, and a good way to start is to find a friend, as I said. Someone, just one person who believes in you. And I'll say if you can't find just one person who believes in your idea, it might not be that good. Or you might just be really early, right? So, but let's say you find one good friend that believes in you. The bad news is that this friend will most likely be very similar to you. You're excited about the same things. You like this idea. You think it's going to be a big revolution. So now it's all about having the courage to invite someone else in, someone who thinks radically different from you, who can really challenge you and bring your project to a new level. So I'll show you kind of a recipe or template for what I see as a good tribe. First of all, you need someone who's willing to work around the rules, someone who doesn't really care too much about the system. But at the same time, you need someone who cares a lot about the system, who knows all the rules. You'll need someone who can cook out the concept out of nothing, who can add that little creative spark and extra flavors and lift it to the next level. Then you need someone who can add a fresh perspective, kind of an alternative point of view, or even bring your project into a global perspective. And obviously, you'll need some workers, someone who can get the job done when we start moving forward. And then you'll need a couple of these guys, actually. The cool kids, the ones that are outside the organizations, the ones that know about trends, know what, in our case, what kind of games the kids are playing, what kind of toys are cool, what they're talking about in the schoolyard. Someone who can make sure that your project is relevant. And then finally, and this is probably the most important one, and my favorite, is the warriors. These are the crazy ones that will fight for the tribe no matter what happens, and they will take all the internal battles, and they aren't afraid to get a few bruises along the way. These last ones we also call project managers. And the good thing now is we've got a tribe together, and it's a pretty diverse group, but now we need to build that sense of belonging. That, of course, the project will do a lot for us, and we're the group working on Project X. But still, we've seen we can enforce this by giving some kind of tribal symbols, you could say. And it can be T-shirts, it can be stickers for your laptops, or like some kind of little funny, in this case, funny hats that will kind of manifest, kind of physical manifestations saying, I'm part of this group. So the question is, how do I get started? I really want a tribe like this. And we come up with this concept around writing love letters. And as tacky as it may sound, we actually mean it quite literally. This has to do with the way we talk, the way we write emails, we invite for meetings, the way we ask for help and say thank you. Because we need people to fall in love with our projects. Because typically we would ask people to work late, go far beyond their job description, and sometimes even break or bend a few rules. So really we need to make people fall in love with our projects. And I talk a lot about breaking rules, and this is not because we particularly enjoy upsetting our colleagues or our management, but sometimes we see that our projects need to break out of the current framework a little bit. And the important point here is to understand what kind of rules we're dealing with, what kind of rules we're trying to break. And my good friend and colleague Paul taught me this a couple of years ago. That in the world there are generally two types of rules. There's the rules of nature and there's the rule of man. And rule of nature is really difficult to change. This is things like gravity, some things we just need to take in and accept. And in our case, a specific example could be around distribution of products. It just takes a certain time to ship Lego boxes across the Atlantic. Not much we can really do about that. On the other hand, we have the rules of man. And inside any big organization, I'm sure at Duke as well, but especially at Lego, we have tons of rules. There are brand and design guidelines, presentation templates, processes to follow, stage gate model, and the list goes on and on and on. And the important thing here is to remember that these are just things that we made up, and we can actually change and challenge these. Even some of the strictest rules are just things we made up. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy to change these, but we can actually do that. And really what we should do in this process is to start to map out what's our project about. So which are the rules that are kind of set in stone we can't really do anything about, and which one are the ones we're going to accept, and which one are we going to challenge. So we can start to build a foundation and understanding of what we're really working with. But as I said in the beginning, we're working on something the world has never seen before, something radically new. So we also need to accept a high degree of uncertainty. And at some point, we just need to go with our gut. We need to trust that what we have in front of us is the good idea. And this is the point in the project that we get into discussion, typically with our management. They would say, "That's a great project, Mikkel, but what are the insights backing this up? How do you know this is going to be a success?" And the point is, we don't. We have no idea if this is going to be a success when we're doing something radically. We've, of course, done our kids test. We've looked at trends and marketing research. But still, it's only painting a picture of this might be the right direction. We actually have no idea if it's going to be a success. And that's exactly the reason why we want to launch. We want to launch a product into the unknown so we can actually learn and we actually harvest some insights from people paying real money for a real product and then getting real feedback. And I bet you there's no focus group in the world that can beat the insight that we're getting this way. So when we can build up the insights and actually have a pretty good idea. But when we first launched, there's actually no turning back. And obviously, this can be a very scary approach to a lot of companies, especially someone like us, like Lego, that has a strong brand we really want to protect. But unfortunately, part of a company also has a management that believes in experimentation and believes in launching pilot projects. Having said this, I am personally extremely impatient by nature, and I think a lot of organizations, including our own, could benefit greatly from experimenting just a little bit more and maybe accepting a little bit higher degree of uncertainty. So finally, we get our product out, and everyone is happy, it's launched, and now it's time to remember everyone who helped us along the way. It means remember everyone in our tribe, remember everyone outside the tribe, and actually even remembering the haters, and saying thank you and really meaning it. And we have this concept of making people shine or making each other shine. And the basic concept is remove as much focus from yourself and give praise and appreciation to everyone around you. And it actually works when everyone does it. And I realize this is a fairly abstract concept. So I'll give you like one specific example. It has to do with a little award that I've run on the stage. So, for those of you who can't see it, it's a little Lego Build Golden Award. And we did this for a project called Life of George, which was about integrating digital and physical play. And in many ways, it's a very difficult project where there's a lot of people who work really hard. So we wanted to recognize that and give a kind of more tangible way of saying thank you. So what we did was we built these little awards, and then late at night we would sneak into the office, place them on different people's desks. So the first thing they would see when they come in the morning was this little award with a note saying, "You're awesome, we love you, thank you so much for all your hard work." And you might say that it's silly to come up with these like homemade awards and hand them out, but it's actually shown to be really efficient and really have a really big impact, especially when we're starting on our next project. When we again need people to fall in love with our project, when we again need them to work hard, break rules, and go far beyond their job description. So if we in some way can remember to say thank you, and especially when we're successful, we should really share the story and be generous. So that sums up the 7 solutions or workarounds that we have identified working for us. And I hope this was of some inspiration to you to go out and do your own crazy, upstream, weird project. And if I may suggest one place to start, how about being a rebel and writing a love letter? Thank you.